I never thought my own mother would ask me to sell my house, the one I bought with every dime I earned from working double shifts at that shitty diner. It was mine, all mine. I put everything into it, the blood, the sweat, the tears, and for a moment, it felt like I had finally made something of myself. But sitting there in that cramped living room, the walls closing in with each word my mother and stepfather spoke, I realized how little my achievements really meant to them. "Sell your house," my stepdad said. It wasn't even a request. It was a statement, a cold, calculated demand. He couldn't even look me in the eye when he said it, his voice shaking like he was afraid of his own words. And I hated him for it. I'd been on edge all day, stressed about work and the fact that I was barely scraping by. College was still a distant dream, one I kept telling myself I'd get to, eventually. But hearing him say those words, seeing the strained look on my mom's face, it hit me like a punch to the gut. "What are you talking about?" I snapped. "You want me to sell my house?"
Why?
"For what?" My mom shifted, clearly uncomfortable. She had this way of avoiding confrontation, as if being passive could make problems go away. It was always like this with her, and I had long since stopped expecting her to stand up for me, even when I needed it most. "Kevin needs help," she said softly, her voice cracking. "Kevin's mother, Carol, is a friend of mine. He got into a good college, but he doesn't have the money to pay for it. You know how much Carol's been there for me over the years. This would help him so much, honey." I felt like I was drowning. I wanted to scream, to punch something, anything, but I didn't. I just sat there, numb, trying to wrap my head around the absurdity of it all. Kevin, some kid I barely knew, who wasn't even a part of our family, was somehow supposed to take priority over everything I had worked for? I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor, and paced across the room. "No," I said flatly. "This is insane. I can't just give up everything for some kid I don't even know. I bought that house with my own money, my own sweat, and you want me to sell it to pay for his college? That's not happening. You can't just come in here and demand that I sacrifice everything for someone else. That's not how this works." "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," my stepdad muttered, his voice getting louder now, but not quite angry, just frustrated. "We're a family. You owe it to us. You owe it to Carol." "I don't owe anyone anything," I shouted, the words exploding out of me like a pressure cooker on the edge of blowing up. "I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't ask to be part of your little family." Mom's face went pale. I could see the hurt in her eyes, but I didn't care. "Not anymore. Please, honey, just listen," she said, reaching out for my arm, but I pulled away. "You know how much Carol has helped me. She's been there for us for so long. I'm just asking you to help her son, to help him get ahead." "This is my life," I spat, pacing in circles around the small living room. "I worked for that house. It's mine. You're asking me to throw it all away for a stranger's kid?" "Kevin isn't a stranger," my stepfather barked, his face red now, his hands clenched into fists. "And this is what families do. They help each other out. That's what we're doing. This is about us all, about being there for people who matter. You're being selfish." The word selfish hit me like a slap across the face. My pulse raced, my hands trembling with the adrenaline of rage. "Selfish." I seethed, my voice rising in pitch. "You think I'm selfish for wanting to keep what's mine? You think I'm selfish for wanting to build a life for myself? Well, here's a news flash. This is my future, and I'll be damned if I let you destroy it for someone else's kid. I'm not that selfish. I'm not selling my house, and I'm not going to sit here and let you convince me that this is the right thing to do." There was a long silence, the kind that cuts through you like ice. My mom didn't say anything, her lips trembling, her eyes welling with tears. And for a moment, I thought maybe she would finally stand up for me. Maybe she would tell him it was wrong, that I didn't owe anyone anything. Maybe she'd finally choose me over her friend's son. But she didn't. "We've already made up our minds," my stepdad said, his tone hardening. "This is happening. You're going to sell your house and help Kevin. That's final." I could feel the weight of his words press down on me. It wasn't about helping someone. It wasn't about family. It was about power, control, and a twisted sense of obligation that I could never live up to. And as I stood there, my whole world crashing around me, I realized just how little control I had left. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about the way they saw me, how they thought they could use me to fix their problems, to pay for their mistakes. And in that moment, I understood something else. This was the beginning of something much darker. This wasn't about helping anyone. This was about me losing everything. Fine, I said, my voice barely a whisper, a cold resignation settling in my chest. I'll sell the house. But deep down, I knew this wouldn't be the end of it. This was only the beginning of a much bigger fight, and I wasn't sure how much more I could lose before I was forced to walk away. The days after the conversation felt like I was walking through a fog, unable to see anything clearly. It wasn't just the house anymore. It was everything. I thought about it constantly, even when I tried not to. I couldn't understand how my mom had gotten to this point, how she could ask me to give up something so important to me for someone who wasn't even a part of our family. She was always so gentle, so caring. At least, that's how she used to be. But now she seemed so distant, like a stranger in her own skin. My stepdad, Tom, was just as bad. Every time I looked at him, I saw that same cold look in his eyes, the same look that made my skin crawl when he told me I had to sell the house. He'd never made me feel small before, but he was doing it now, piece by piece. For the first few days, I tried to stay busy. I kept working at the diner, racking up more hours than I ever had before, trying to drown out the noise in my head. I'd come home, eat something quick, then go straight to my room and shut the door. I didn't want to talk to either of them. I didn't want to hear about how important Kevin's education was. I didn't want to hear about how much Carol had done for us. But even in my own space, I couldn't escape it. That first night after I said I would sell the house, I went straight to my room and sat on the bed, staring at the walls. I had the paperwork for the sale right there on my desk, the words printed out in black ink, waiting for me to sign. I could almost hear the weight of the pen in my hand, the finality of it. I didn't know how I got to this point, but I couldn't figure out a way out of it. They'd cornered me, made me feel like the bad guy for not just going along with their plan. I could almost hear my mom's voice in my head, pleading with me to help Kevin, to do the right thing for the family. But no one was asking me what I wanted. No one was asking me what was best for me. It was the third night that things started to really get bad. Tom came into my room after dinner, his face unreadable. I didn't even look up at first, too tired to deal with whatever he was about to say. "We need to talk," he said, and I could hear the frustration in his voice. He had no patience left, like he thought everything I was doing was some kind of rebellion. I turned to face him, arms crossed over my chest. "What now?" Tom didn't waste time beating around the bush. "I'm getting calls from Carol, asking when you're going to sign the papers. She's waiting, and I don't think you understand how much this means. You're the one holding us up." I could feel the blood rush to my head, the heat of anger spreading across my skin. "I told you, I'm not just handing over my house. I told you I'd sell it, but I'm not doing it like this, like some damn favor to Carol and Kevin. I don't care how much she's helped you in the past. This isn't right." Tom stood there, his jaw tightening, and for a moment, I thought he might lash out. But he didn't. Instead, he took a deep breath, his voice quieter now, more controlled. "I'm not asking you to hand it over. I'm asking you to do what's right. This is your chance to help someone who's been part of your life for years. You're asking me to throw away everything I've worked for, and you think it's just a chance to help," I said, my voice rising again. "You're asking me to sacrifice my future for Kevin's. I don't even know the kid. I'm not doing this." Tom didn't respond immediately. Instead, he took a step back and looked around the room, as if trying to figure out what to say next. Finally, he met my eyes, his expression hard, cold. "If you don't do this, then maybe you're not as much of a part of this family as you think you are." It was a low blow. And it worked, because in that moment, I felt like I was drowning in my own guilt. I didn't want to be the one who broke everything apart, the one who made the family fall apart over something as petty as a house. But I wasn't being selfish. I wasn't. They were asking too much, and they were trying to make me feel bad for standing my ground. It was all wrong. The next day, I couldn't stand it anymore. I went to Carol's house. I had to. I needed to hear it from her directly. Maybe I'd find some way to convince her this was a bad idea, to tell her that I didn't want to sell the house. Maybe she'd understand. I'd known her for years. She'd always been nice enough to me. But when I knocked on the door and she opened it, I saw it. Her face was too calm, too practiced. It was like she already knew what was coming. "Hi, sweetie," Carol said, giving me a tight smile. "I was wondering when you'd come by. Tom said you'd be over soon."
I didn't waste time.
"I'm not selling the house, Carol. You can't make me do it." She blinked, her smile faltering for just a second, but then she recovered. "Oh, honey," she said, her voice sweet but carrying a weight I hadn't noticed before. "It's not just about the house, you know. It's about family. It's about us helping each other out. You've seen how much Kevin struggles, how much his future is riding on this. I don't think you understand how much this could change everything for him. For all of us." I stared at her, my mind racing. This isn't about Kevin. This is about you and Tom manipulating me into thinking this is something I have to do. You don't even care about me, Carol. You just want to use me to fix your problems. Her face tightened. "You think I don't care about you? You think I haven't tried to make you feel welcome? I've treated you like family, haven't I?" Her words were sharp, like they were cutting through the air between us. "This is about everyone, not just you. It's about what's best for the future, and sometimes sacrifices need to be made." That was it. It clicked. This wasn't about Kevin. This wasn't about a college education. This was about control, about twisting the situation to make me feel like I had no choice. They were all in on it, Carol, Tom, my mom. They'd already decided what was going to happen, and I was the only one left who hadn't gotten on board. I'd never been more certain that I was being manipulated in my life. But I didn't know what to do about it. I didn't know how to stop it. As I walked out of Carol's house, my chest tight, my hands shaking, I knew I was about to lose everything. I wasn't just losing my house. I was losing a part of myself. But I couldn't give in. I couldn't let them win. Even if it cost me everything. Even if I had to walk away from it all, I had to make them see that I wasn't just a pawn. I wasn't going to let them dictate my future anymore. The days after that conversation with Carol were even harder. I could barely look at my mom and stepdad without feeling a deep, gnawing resentment. Every word out of their mouths felt like another push to sell the house, to give up everything I had worked for. Every time I walked into the kitchen, Tom was there, subtly reminding me how much they needed the money, how much Kevin deserved a shot at a good future. But the worst part was my mom. She kept looking at me like she was waiting for me to change my mind, her eyes pleading, but always distant. She wasn't really looking at me, not anymore. She was looking at what she wanted me to do. It was like I was becoming invisible to her, a thing that didn't matter unless it could serve her purpose. One evening, after a long shift at the diner, I came home exhausted, ready to shut myself away in my room. But when I walked in, I noticed something different. Tom wasn't in the living room, and my mom was standing by the front door, talking to someone. I froze when I saw who it was. It was Karen. Karen was an old friend of my mom's, someone who I hadn't seen in years. She wasn't close to the family, but she always had this sharp, kind of off-putting energy that made me uneasy whenever she was around. She had a way of making people feel small, like she was always one step ahead of everyone else. I never liked her, but she was always there, lingering in the background of family events, a permanent fixture that I couldn't shake. Seeing her there now made my stomach turn. She was leaning in, talking quietly to my mom, and I could hear her laughing in a way that wasn't friendly at all. "Mom, what's going on?" I asked, trying to keep the edge out of my voice, but failing miserably. Both of them turned to look at me. Karen's smile faded, replaced by something colder, more calculated. My mom's face softened, and she straightened up from the doorframe, wiping her hands on her apron. "Oh, honey, Karen was just giving me a bit of advice," my mom said, the words coming out too easily, like it wasn't anything I should be concerned about. "She just wanted to help us figure out how to handle the sale of your house." I felt the blood rush to my head. "What? You've got Karen involved in this now? Are you serious?" Karen stepped forward, her heels clicking on the wooden floor, a sharp contrast to my growing unease. "It's not a big deal," she said, her voice smooth, condescending. "Your mom and Tom are just trying to do what's best for everyone. You can't hold on to your house forever, can you? You're not even using it to its full potential. Think of what you could do with that money." My chest tightened, and I could feel my hands start to shake. I took a step back, trying to maintain some composure, but it was hard. Karen was always the kind of person who made you question your own decisions, like she knew exactly how to manipulate you without ever seeming like she was doing it. I didn't know if she was being genuinely helpful or if she was in on it too, helping push me over the edge. "Stop," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just stop. I'm not selling the house. Not for Kevin. Not for anyone." My mom looked at me, this disappointed expression in her eyes, and I almost couldn't take it. "Honey, this is for the best. Kevin's future is on the line. Don't you see how much this could change everything for him?" "No, I don't see it," I snapped, my voice cracking. "I don't see how helping Kevin is worth losing everything I've worked for. You're asking me to give up my future. You're asking me to sacrifice my entire life for someone else." Karen's smile curled, her eyes narrowing just slightly, like she was enjoying the discomfort she was causing. "Sweetie, it's not about you anymore. This is about the greater good. And don't you want to be the kind of person who helps others? Who sacrifices for the people who need it?" "You're all so full of shit," I muttered under my breath. I wasn't sure if I was talking to Karen, my mom, or both of them. I didn't care. I had had enough. This was never about Kevin. This wasn't even about family. It was about control. "Enough, Olivia," my mom said, her voice sharp now. She stepped forward, grabbing my arm in a way that felt far too possessive. "This is your family. You need to stop acting like you're the only one who matters." I yanked my arm out of her grip. "That's the problem, isn't it? You only care about your side of the family. You never cared about what I want." Karen made a noise, like she was bored with the whole thing. "Look, I'm sure you're going through something right now. But sometimes, you have to trust the people who know better than you. You're young. You don't see the bigger picture. If you sell the house, you'll be free. You'll be able to start fresh, and maybe you can even go to college with the money you get. Think about it." I was on the verge of losing it. I had never felt so trapped in my own life, surrounded by people who were trying to force me into a mold I didn't fit into. Everything I'd worked for, every decision I'd made, had led me to this point, and now they were trying to erase it. They didn't care about what I wanted or needed. They just cared about what was easiest for them. But just as I was about to explode, I heard a knock at the door. It wasn't a loud knock, just a soft tap, but it was enough to stop everything for a second. I turned toward the door, confused. "Who is it?" my mom asked, clearly irritated at the interruption. "I'm not sure," I said, walking toward the door without waiting for anyone else to move. When I opened it, I found a man standing there, someone I didn't recognize. He was older, maybe in his late 40s, with a hard face and a tired look in his eyes. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice cautious. "I'm Tom's brother, Rick," he said, his voice rough, almost apologetic. "I need to talk to you, Olivia. It's important." I looked back into the living room. Both my mom and Karen were standing there, silent now, their faces a little too guarded. Something was off. I stepped outside, shutting the door behind me, and Rick didn't waste any time. "Look," he said, lowering his voice, "I'm not here to make things worse. But there's something you don't know. Your stepdad, he's got a problem. And it's not with Kevin.
It's not even about the house."
I froze, my heart hammering. "What are you talking about?" Rick looked around nervously before speaking again. "Tom's in debt. A lot of debt. And he's been using the idea of helping Kevin to cover it up. He needs the money from your house, Olivia. It's all about his own mess, not Kevin's future." I stared at Rick, the world spinning. This wasn't about helping anyone. This was about Tom covering his own tracks. I didn't know what to say, but I knew this was the moment everything changed. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, trying to wrap my head around Rick's words. His face was serious, his eyes darting around like he was afraid someone might overhear us. I didn't know whether to be angry or relieved. This was the truth I'd been searching for, the key to everything that had been eating at me. But it was also worse than I could have imagined. Tom, my stepdad, the man I'd looked up to for years, was hiding something this huge, something that threatened not just my house, but everything I thought I knew about him. I had no idea how deep his lies went. Tom's in debt, I repeated, barely able to get the words out. How much? Rick rubbed the back of his neck, looking even more uncomfortable now. Enough to ruin him. And he's been trying to cover it up with everything he's got. I didn't want to get involved in his mess, but I can't stand seeing you get dragged into it. This isn't about helping Kevin, it never was. Tom's been playing you. He needs that house to pay off what he owes. My mind was racing, thoughts flying everywhere, colliding like a storm. I felt dizzy, like the ground was slipping from under me. Tom's debts weren't just financial, they were emotional, too. He'd been using my family, using me, to cover his own mistakes. I felt a sickening rush of betrayal. For all the years I'd lived under his roof, all the moments I'd thought we were a family, I was nothing more than a pawn in a game he'd been playing. I don't know what to do with this, I whispered. How am I supposed to go back inside now? How do I face them? How do I even look at Tom? Rick's face softened, and he placed a hand on my shoulder. You don't have to do anything just yet. I'm not asking you to take this all on by yourself, but you need to know what you're up against before you make any more decisions. Tom's been cornered. He's running out of time. And now, it's up to you whether you want to be the one to bail him out, or whether you want to stand your ground. I looked up at him, shaking my head, trying to process everything. This isn't just about money. This is my life. My future. You don't understand what they're asking of me. Rick didn't respond immediately. He was quiet for a long moment, watching me carefully. I know, but you can't let them push you into a decision that's going to ruin you. You've worked hard for that house.
It's yours, Olivia.
Don't let them take it from you, without a fight. His words hit me like a jolt of electricity. I had been so focused on my mom and Tom's expectations, so wrapped up in their guilt trips and their manipulation, that I'd forgotten one key thing. I had a right to protect what was mine. I had worked for this. I'd fought for it, spent years saving every penny, every hour I could spare. This wasn't just a house, it was the symbol of everything I had built. And now they wanted me to throw it all away. For what? To fix Tom's mess? To give Kevin an education I wasn't sure he even deserved? I could feel the anger swelling inside me again, stronger this time, pushing away the fear. I won't let them do this, I said, more to myself than to Rick. I'm not going to let Tom and Carol control me. I'm not giving up my house, my future, for their mistakes. Rick nodded slowly, his eyes hard. Then you need to stand firm. Don't let them manipulate you any longer. They think they have you cornered, but you've got more power than you realize. The sooner you make a move, the better. If you don't act, you might lose everything you've worked for. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. How do I fight this? How do I even start? Rick glanced over his shoulder, making sure no one was watching. Then, in a low voice, he said, Tom's been borrowing money from some bad people. People who won't just go away if he doesn't pay. You think this whole Kevin thing is the only pressure he's under? No, it's just a cover-up. If you want to stop this, you need to make Tom face what he's done. You need to put a stop to it before it gets worse. My heart was racing now, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I was terrified. I didn't know what kind of danger Tom had gotten himself into, but I knew one thing for sure. It was bigger than I had imagined. This wasn't just a simple family issue anymore. This was something much darker, something I wasn't sure I was ready for. But I had no choice now. I couldn't back down. Not when I knew the truth. I'll do whatever it takes, I said, my voice shaky but determined. I'm not letting them ruin my life. I won't let them get away with it. Rick seemed to consider this for a moment before speaking again. All right, but you can't do this alone. You need to talk to someone who can help. Someone who knows how to handle this kind of thing. Trust me, this is way above your pay grade. I nodded, my mind already spinning with possibilities. Who? Rick hesitated for a moment, his eyes flicking to the side, like he was weighing something in his mind. I know a guy. He's a private investigator. He's dealt with people like Tom before. If you want to protect yourself, if you want to make sure your house stays yours, you need to get him involved. I felt a flicker of hope rise inside me. This was it. The first step toward taking control back. I didn't know if I was ready for everything this could unravel, but I knew I couldn't just sit back anymore. I had to fight for what was mine, and I wasn't going to let anyone, especially Tom, take that away from me. Give me his number, I said, my voice firm. I'm done waiting. I'm done being pushed around. It's time to take action. Rick pulled out his phone and typed something in, then handed it to me.
Call him. Tell him I sent you.
You've got to move fast, Olivia. The longer you wait, the more dangerous it gets. I took the phone from him, looking down at the number, feeling the weight of the decision press down on me. This was the moment. This was where everything changed. No more running. No more pretending like I didn't have a say in my own life. I turned to walk back inside, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if I was ready to face Tom and my mom, to expose everything they'd been hiding. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going down without a fight. I had already lost too much to turn back now. And I wasn't about to let them take everything I'd worked for. The days following that conversation with Rick felt like a blur. I barely slept, and when I did, I found myself waking up in the middle of the night, heart racing, mind replaying the conversation over and over. I couldn't shake the image of Tom and my mom standing there, acting like everything was normal, like everything they'd been asking of me was completely justified. But it wasn't normal. It was a lie. Everything had been a lie.
I didn't waste time.
I called the private investigator Rick had given me. His name was Sam, and he sounded like someone who had seen everything, heard everything, and didn't bat an eye at anything. He listened as I explained what little I knew about Tom's debts, the desperation in my voice creeping in as I went on. When I finished, there was a long pause before Sam spoke. "You've done the right thing by calling me," he said, his voice calm and steady. "Now, here's what we're going to do. I'll start looking into Tom's finances and anyone he might owe money to. You don't have to do anything else for now. I'll keep you updated. But if you want to protect yourself, if you want to make sure this doesn't come back on you, I'd suggest you start thinking about what you're going to do next." I wasn't sure what he meant at first, but as soon as he said it, I felt a pit form in my stomach. What was I supposed to do next? I hadn't even thought that far ahead. All I knew was that I couldn't let Tom's mess ruin my life. I had worked too hard to get where I was, and I wasn't about to lose it all because of some poor decisions he had made. I spent the next few days pretending like everything was fine. I went to work at the diner, came home, and tried to act like I hadn't just uncovered a massive betrayal. But it wasn't easy. Every time Tom or my mom said anything about the house, about selling it for Kevin, I felt like I was being suffocated. The words were starting to lose their meaning, to sound empty and hollow. I didn't care about Kevin anymore. I didn't care about their excuses. All I cared about was keeping what was mine. Then, 2 days later, Sam called me back. The news wasn't good. "I've got some information for you," he said, his tone clipped. "Tom's debts are worse than I thought. He's in deep with some pretty unsavory people. The kind of people who won't let him off the hook without paying. And the more I dig, the more I find there's a lot more going on here than just money. This is about covering up things he's done, things that go way beyond what you know." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What do you mean, covering up things?" "I can't give you all the details just yet," Sam said. "But Tom's been hiding more than just his financial troubles. He's been hiding his involvement with some people who aren't exactly forgiving when it comes to debt. I'll get back to you when I have more. But you need to prepare for the worst." I hung up, my mind spinning. What had Tom gotten himself into? And why hadn't he told me about any of this? I didn't have answers, only more questions. And the worst part was that I couldn't even confront him about it, not yet. Not until I knew everything. But every minute I waited felt like a minute wasted. It felt like I was running out of time, running out of options. Later that evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to do something. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. So, I walked into the living room where Tom and my mom were sitting, watching TV. They looked up when I entered, and I could see the tension in Tom's face. He knew something was up. I could feel it in the way he looked at me, like he was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Mom, Tom, we need to talk, I said, my voice steady but firm. Tom immediately stood up, his expression shifting to one of concern, but there was something else there, something guarded. What's going on, Olivia? Is something wrong? I took a deep breath and crossed my arms.
I know about the debts.
I know you've been lying to me. Tom's face froze. My mom looked between the two of us, confusion flickering across her features. What are you talking about? She asked, her voice wavering slightly. I know you're in debt, Tom. I know it's more than just about helping Kevin go to college. You're not fooling me anymore. Rick told me everything. Tom's face darkened, and I saw a flicker of panic in his eyes. For a second, I thought he was going to deny it, to lie again, but instead, he sighed, running a hand through his hair. Olivia, listen, I didn't want to drag you into this. I didn't want you to get hurt by any of this mess. I was just trying to protect you. I never wanted you to know. But you let me believe that selling my house was the only option. I shot back, my voice rising. You let me think that my future didn't matter, that all I had worked for meant nothing, just so you could cover your tracks. My mom spoke then, her voice barely above a whisper. Olivia, it wasn't supposed to be like this. We didn't want you to know about the debts. Tom thought he could handle it on his own. We thought if we could help Kevin, maybe it would all work out. By using me? I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. By making me the one to sacrifice everything? Tom stepped forward then, his face etched with guilt and frustration. I never meant for this to happen. I didn't want you to be involved in this mess. But we're out of options. I thought if we sold your house, we could pay off the debts, get everything back on track. It was the only way. I felt a rush of anger surge through me. The only way? You've had every opportunity to come clean to me, but you chose to keep lying. You chose to manipulate me, and you think I'm just supposed to forgive you? After everything? My mom's eyes filled with tears, but I couldn't find it in myself to feel sorry for her.
Not now.
Not after everything she had let happen. Olivia, I didn't know what else to do, she said, her voice breaking. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at them both. And then, as the silence stretched between us, I made my decision. It wasn't a choice I wanted to make, but it was the only one left. I couldn't trust them. Not anymore. Not until they proved they could take responsibility for their actions. I'm not selling the house, I said, my voice unwavering. And I'm not giving you my future. If you want to fix your mess, Tom, you'll have to do it without me. I'm done being your scapegoat. Tom looked at me, his face a mixture of guilt and frustration. Olivia, please. No, I said firmly, cutting him off. I'm done. I've already lost too much because of you. And with that, I walked out, leaving them both behind. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control. I wasn't going to let them take away everything I'd worked for. And I wasn't going to be anyone's pawn anymore. The fight wasn't over yet, but I was ready. Ready to take back my life. Ready to protect everything I had built.
And no one was going to stop me.